Welcome back to Edgework here on the Hammer Betting Network, a daily live NHL show Monday through Friday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. You can find us here on each of those days giving out picks and previewing the games for that night. So make sure to subscribe here to the Edgework HQ YouTube channel. Today is Wednesday, February 22nd. We only got 3 games tonight, so we'll break down each of those games. But before we do, Alex, I got to ask you, what's going on in Chicago right now? The Blackhawks on a 3-game win streak. Patrick Kane basically says, all right, New York, you're not going to trade for me. Toronto, you're not going to trade for me. I'll show you what you're missing out on. And the guy's been on fire since those trades have gone down. But what is happening in Chicago, and how quickly are they going to be looking to get him out of their lineup so that they can continue to tank for Bedard?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of making things a little hard for what the rebuild right now. But missed out. I mean, literally a tenth of a second, less than that, away from having arguably one of the best game-winning goals in NHL history with that slap shot at the buzzer. That unfortunately did not count.
That would have been the best. I think the best regular season game winner in history. I would have never. I can't recall anything even coming close to that.
Especially when you look at the circumstances of that could potentially be his last game at the United Center. That would have been the perfect way to put a bow on his Blackhawk career if it does come to a close at some point. But yeah, I mean, the Hawks keep on winning when they're really not supposed to, and here they are tonight, about to play another division opponent that they've actually battled well over the years with in the Dallas Stars. So kind of defeating the purpose, but as a fan, it is at least nice to see them get some wins under their belt and seeing some of these younger players develop too. Seem like guys like Jackson Starbird should be getting the nod tonight in net. Already 4-1 in his career. He's the first Hawks goalie said over and over 50 years to win his first 3 starts as a rookie. So there's some bright spots going on the west side of Chicago right now.
Is that a Bobby Hull jersey?
This is good old number 8. It's Patrick Kane. I know what you're trying to do there, Andy. No.
Oh boy. All right. Well,
my dad met Bobby Hull one time at a casino, and he was drunk, and he signed it was like after an old timers hockey game, and he signed the ticket. And I remember he brought it home to me, and I was like, "What the fuck do I want this for?" It's like some old timer hockey, just some scribbled on autograph.
I mean, to the dearly departed, but if you have a Bobby Hull story, chances are if you met him, probably wasn't that sober.
Yeah, I guess so.
As I said, there are only 3 games today, so we'll get into each of those and break them down. But if you have any questions today about games or even about future things coming up, make sure to ask them in the chat, and you can do so here on the Edgework YouTube channel. We will see them live. We'll be able to get to them, so we'll answer them throughout the show. But before we actually start on the games, I have one more question here. Andy, you watched Ryan O'Reilly play last night, get a hat trick for the Maple Leafs. How are you feeling about that trade now? For anyone listening on the podcast after, and he just left.
I told you I was out, man. We're not gonna talk about this. Yeah, I mean, great
I knew he was gonna do that.
Great for the Maple Leafs. Moving on.
All right, great. Fair enough. Moving on. But I mean, you guys are getting Patrick Kane. The Bruins are getting Patrick Kane, right?
Do you really? No. I just don't. That has never even crossed my mind once. I just
No, it's the top article on ESPN right now. I'm not kidding. I'm not actually.
When did that go up? That just went up this morning,
I believe. Yeah. Yeah.
Who's that? Is that Wyshynski or?
I'll pull it up right now. Emily Kaplan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I was kind of leaning, based on everything I heard the last little bit over the weekend and stuff, I was kind of leaning towards him not moving at all. But I don't know.
That's what I honestly believe. I could easily see him not getting moved.
Yeah. I think I think that's kind of where I was at the start of the season. Like, even though I was, in kind of, trying to account for the fact that the Blackhawks might not have Kane and Jonathan Taves for the entire season. Like, this is back in September, I mean. But I was kind of always just because we're kind of conditioned to get excited for these things to happen, and they don't end up happening. So I don't know, kind of wouldn't be surprised at all to see him just stay in Chicago, and
And especially now with Taves not getting moved, and like I said, I'm just waiting for the announcement of Taves to pretty much call it a career at some point. I think that's coming sooner than later. I think Kane might be sticking around. Even that might actually have something to do with it as well, too. I mean, those two have been literally together their entire career. Taves came in a year early, obviously, but other than that, the two have been synonymous with one another and synonymous with the Hawks their entire career. So
I think if you're Boston, you absolutely add Patrick Kane to what you have right now and go for it, and don't even think twice about the future ramifications of whatever it is, because I think that really would set the Bruins apart in terms of the kind of high end skill that they have at the top of their lineup. But I don't know. I'd be flabbergasted if that happened.
All right, well, let's get into the games here. We'll start with the Winnipeg Islanders game. Winnipeg on the road to New York tonight. Winnipeg currently is holding on to second spot in the Central, 1 point behind this Dallas team. They're 4 up on Colorado, but they got 2 more games played than the Avalanche to this point. And the Islanders right now are holding on to the first wild card spot in the East. They managed to jump over Pittsburgh and Washington, them and Florida did actually the other day with the Islanders win over the Penguins. I guess there's double back-to-back wins over the Penguins that helped vault them into that position. Now 1 point up on Florida, 2 points up on Pittsburgh, 6-2-2 in their last 10 games. Andy, start with you. Any thoughts on this game here tonight?
I mean, like, first off, how bad Western Conference teams have done in the East this season. It's been a pretty brutal year for that. But I mean, the Jets are in the among the top teams in the West. The Isles are definitely not a formidable opponent. Goaltending matchup is interesting. You've got Hellebuck, who really he's only played 3 games since the All-Star break, and 2 of those games came in 2 nights just a couple of days ago. So he's maybe playing his 3rd game in 4 days here. I would assume they go back to him today. But yeah, I've got the Jets as a small favorite. I mean, both of these teams are absolutely starved for goals right now. But I think the Jets have a higher offensive ceiling, and should be a small favorite, but just not enough to justify making a bet. I had them priced around -105 when I looked this morning. So I mean, New York is a weird team right now. They're really not playing great defensively. They've been giving up a lot of shots over the last couple of weeks, and with Matt Barzal out of the lineup, their offensive ceiling is a little bit lower than usual. But I mean, side note, just how bad are the Penguins? Because if you look at this Islanders lineup, like, it still blows me away that they were able to get that win. Not obviously, anything can happen, but really surprised that they were able to take it to the Penguins the way they did in the last game. You look at this lineup, there are some. I mean, they've got Matt Martin on the top line right now. It's pretty brutal. So I'm not a big fan of what the Islanders have going on right now. But the Jets, man, they just aren't getting their scoring rates just aren't where they should be. I mean, they've been generating a lot of expected goals over the last month or so, and just not getting the results. So hope maybe that'll turn, but against a guy like Ilya Sorokin, it's a pretty tough spot.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think obviously we're seeing this total lined at 5.5. It's clearly from the goaltending matchup of Sorokin going against Hellebuck, and it's going to be hard for Hellebuck to try to top the performance he had in his last outing, making 50 saves on 51 shots in that win. But as you mentioned, the Islanders, their offense is already kind of tested and limited. And, missing a guy like Barzal, that's a pretty tough thing to deal with. So hopefully, like I said, they've been allowing a lot of shots. I'd like to see Winnipeg get a goal early in this contest and then maybe try to go for a live under at a better price. It's just kind of dicey playing unders at 5.5. You get a couple of trippy goals here and there, and all of a sudden it goes over. So I think this could be an understyled matchup, especially with the goaltenders involved and some slightly limited offenses. But 5.5 scares me a little bit of that number.
All right, I'm interested in your guys' thoughts on the Eastern Conference playoff situation, how it shapes out. We've talked about it a few times on here, just in terms of the Metro and the Atlantic, those three teams. That's essentially what it's going to be come playoffs, barring anything extreme happening over the next little while. But you kind of look at the wild card and how it breaks down right now. The Islanders are 1 point up on Florida. Florida's 1 point up on Pittsburgh, who's 1 point up on Detroit and Washington. And even at this point, Buffalo's, yeah, they don't play that well against the top end teams, but they're not really out of this thing as it stands right now. Like, they're 4 points back of Florida. If you're to kind of look at this this playoff picture, would there be any teams that you'd maybe look at who aren't inside the playoff position right now to say, like, hey, that team could leapfrog another team? Is there teams that, like the Islanders, like Florida, that you'd say, hey, maybe they'll fall off as the season goes on and we get closer and closer to the actual playoffs and when things start to lock in a little bit more? Because as we approach here, it feels like all of those teams that I had just mentioned are going to still continue to try to add here at the deadline. Maybe a team like Buffalo might not go out and go big name hunting or anything or mortgage the future, but try to add a piece and show the guys like, hey, you battled back. We're in a good position here. Let's try to snap this 11-year playoff drought. Or like, you could see somebody just try to make some type of push or add any type of player there. But a team like Washington, I feel like, is probably gonna fall off or continue to fall off, might not make it in. Pittsburgh is in that weird spot, and like Andy said, like, they're really not that good. But I'm looking at this just kind of trying to figure out who is going to make the playoffs here in the East, and I can't really get a grip on it.
Yeah, it's a bunch of mid teams that are fighting for those two final spots in that wild card race. And honestly, Buffalo could put themselves right at the top of that list if they go out and get a proven veteran goalie. Ukko Pekka-Luukkonen is not ready for prime time. He's not ready to take on the bulk of this workload, especially big time games moving forward. If they wish to climb up and grab a playoff spot, I think they have to do something about their goaltending. If they do that, they're easily the best team out of that group you just mentioned. But we were talking about this on a podcast I did last night. And Detroit Red Wings kind of stick out as well. They're a team that they don't do a lot of things consistently night in and night out. But with a guy like Husso, who has a record of getting hot and getting streaky at times, you can give them maybe a puncher's chance to stay float longer than some of these other teams. But I think Florida and Washington are two teams that are going to find themselves playing themselves out of the string, especially Florida. I mean, their inconsistencies, especially on offense, have been really brutal this year. So it's going to shake itself out. And like I said, the deadline is going to be big for that group of 6 teams to see who's going to be in and who's going to be out.
Yeah, I could definitely see these teams playing musical chairs for the rest of the season. I mean, nobody really screams contender, right? They've all got their warts. They've all got problems. They've all got obviously some good qualities too. But I think, as in terms of Washington, though, I wouldn't totally write them off, because I think you could see a big push from them, through the last 20 games of the season if they get back to full strength and they really don't have any injury troubles to deal with. So I think you could see something big from them. I mean, Kemper, you talk about goalies that have been streaky. Well, Kemper's been pretty streaky, and he could easily get hot and turn things around pretty quickly, right? So I think I wouldn't write Washington off, but I do agree with Alex in terms of a team like Florida probably playing themselves out. They just seem to be as much as you would think that they would be able to force the issue if they just continued to press on offense the way that they can. The goaltending continues to be a big problem, and it's going to mean that they're not able to win games as easily as they should be able to.
All right, a question for you then, last thing kind of on this specific topic is, if you are Detroit or Buffalo, how do you navigate approaching the deadline and then approaching playoffs here? I think the deadline would be the first thing that's going to be the biggest domino to fall, where you kind of have to make a decision of what you're going to do. But I'm looking at this, I kind of personally slot Buffalo in close to where the Leafs were the first year that they made the playoffs with Matthews, Marner, Nylander, and those guys, in the sense of get these guys to the playoffs, give them an opportunity to experience it. You get there, you learn the atmosphere, you learn what it's like to play in the playoffs. And it's not like a knock on them. It's just that they haven't had that. And once you kind of get there, you learn that, and you start to kind of understand the feeling and the intensity of it. So
might
maybe
take
they go
6 years, but you start to learn it. Yeah.
Anyways,
Have they learned anything yet? How many have the Leafs learned anything from all of this playoff experience yet?
Andy, the honest answer is no. No, they haven't.
You've got to learn how to lose again and again and again before you learn how to win. That's what they say, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, what is the saying? It's like a winner is just a loser who kept trying. That's what we got here in Toronto right now. We're just losers who keep trying. Yeah. But you look at Buffalo, I kind of feel like they'd be in that spot. Maybe go out and acquire a small piece. But if you're Detroit, you're even closer than Buffalo is to an opportunity to make the playoffs, and you're kind of just outside of that spot. But you have some pending UFAs. You haven't got a contract situation lined up with Larkin. Things have been kind of up and down throughout this season. If you are those two teams, like, how do you play it out? Because you are also looking at these other teams around them, those 3-4 other teams that they're probably going to go out and try to acquire a big piece because they're in a much different organizational position than you are.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think for Buffalo, it's much easier because Buffalo's lineup, I mean, that's pretty much intact when you look at the top 6. None of those guys are getting moved. None of the top 4 defensemen are getting moved. If you look at their their basic starting lineup, the 2 names that stick out would be Cal Okposo, $6 million cap hit playing on your 4th line, and then Craig Anderson, a 41-year-old goalie who's giving you mid-range numbers, and you're paying him $1.5 million. If you can, ship those 2 guys off and get you a better upgrade in net, I think that's all Buffalo really needs to do. But yeah, it's a lot dicier with Detroit. They got a lot of guys they need to try to re-sign moving forward, and they got to figure out who's going to fit in there, and can they move some of those pieces and get guys in return that can not only be an impact now and make a push toward the playoffs, but they can sign them long term and keep a stable core going forward.
Right. I think for Buffalo, I don't know if I would necessarily do anything. If I was running that team, I'd probably be pretty happy with where we're at right now. And I think you can get away without doing anything, without getting too much grief from the fan base and whatnot because of just how much progress the team has made this year. I don't think anybody's going to blame the management group for not, going all in a year where clearly the Eastern Conference is going to be tough anyway. But for Detroit, I don't know. It's like Detroit made, unlike Buffalo, Detroit made a lot of moves and tried to improve their team, thinking that they could, make that next step this season, right? So, does this instill some confidence in their process there? Do they add to it, or do they look at the larger picture and really that this team, is probably not there yet, and they still have a long way to go before they are going to be a legitimate threat in the playoffs? So I'm not sure if I'm Detroit, if I would even consider really trying to push the issue here.
If you are Detroit, though, do you kind of maybe look at it the other way of like, all right, maybe it's now time we could ship some of these guys out. We know we're not going to get them signed because you hear Larkin, Bertuzzi, like these are guys who could potentially be moved. Is that maybe a route that you start to look at?
Oh, yeah, of course. I think, I don't know, based on everything I hear, it seems like, I don't know, Alex probably has a better read on this than I do, but I haven't heard anything about Larkin not wanting to stay in Detroit. Have you? Is that?
No, I haven't heard one way or the other, but it seems like the talks are kind of fraying a bit as they go on. So,
yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's continue to look at games for tonight. We do have the Blackhawks coming off a back-to-back here with a win last night against the Vegas Golden Knights. They are 3-game win streak right now, 5-4-1 in their last 10. But this team is, as much as they're not a great team, they are very bad on the road. 7-16-2 going in to face a Dallas team who's holding on to first in the Central right now. A point up on Winnipeg. Yeah, a point up on Winnipeg. Same number of games played as them. 5 points up on Colorado, but they have played 2 more games than the Avalanche. 3-2-5 in their last 10. So this team is skidding out right now. 4-game losing streak for them. Is this a bounce back spot here, Alex, tonight for the Dallas Stars, an opportunity to find themselves and start to turn things around, or is your Chicago Blackhawks going to continue to roll here?
I mean, I've been trying to pinpoint when the bounce back spot for the Dallas Stars is going to happen throughout these last 9 games. They've lost 7 of them, so getting kind of tired of trying to figure that out. But like I said, the Hawks have been playing some solid hockey, and they've always played Dallas fairly tough over the years. Just taking a quick look, they've lost the last 5 meetings, but previous to that, they've been playing them pretty much around 500. And one of the things to look at with this matchup is, like I said, Dallas really needing to get points, especially against a division opponent, and trying to stay afloat, trying to hang on to that top spot in the Central. We've seen them play a lot of close games lately. I think this one might be a good overtime spot, and you're getting plus 440. I'm seeing up to plus 472 at Pinnacle for the draw. And we just saw the Hawks go to OT against a good Vegas team last night. Like I said, with Dallas, just in their last 10 games alone, we've seen them go to OT in 6 of them. So this is definitely worth a shot, sprinkling with the draw. So we've been seeing a lot of these games going to OT lately. Teams just want to get out of there with at least 1 point, and that's definitely the case for Dallas. They want to get points, and if it's close late, they're not going to risk coming out of there empty-handed.
All right, well, we could put a half unit on that then for the regulation draw between Dallas and Chicago, and you can track that here on the Edgework HQ bet stamp account. You can find it in the Find Better section as Edgework HQ. See all the picks from every day, how we've done throughout the course of the season, our pending futures bets. You can see that all on there, so make sure to go check that out. But we'll put a half unit on that. And Andy, any thoughts for you in this game tonight?
No, I mean, I echo a lot of what Alex said, and I mean, you look at Dallas right now. First of all, this is a very tough spot for Chicago. It's 6 game in 9 nights. Start of a road trip. Clearly, they've got that Patrick Kane energy to feed off of right now, though, which might help them give them a little boost like it has. But I'm definitely not interested in anything Dallas here, because this is a team that's scored 5 goals over the last 4 games. They've lost 7 of their last 9. I know we talked about it around the All-Star break, Zach, and just about how Winnipeg was probably the value bet in the Central Division. The Stars were around minus 145. Now they're at plus 110 to win the division. The Jets down to 400. But yeah, it's just not a spot that, I mean, it might definitely be, or it might very likely be a get right spot for Dallas here, but not a value spot by any means. And I think I'll just, like I said, cheer for overtime here with Alex.
All right, I like it. I'll be on that one as well. And final game of the night, the Calgary Flames going to Arizona to take on the Coyotes. This Calgary team currently sitting outside of a playoff spot in the West right now, 4 points back of Minnesota, 7 points back of Edmonton. They are 4-4-2 in their last 10, and they got a lot going on there with them. You're hearing started with Sutter going out and pretending he didn't know the kid's name, Jacob Pelletier, that makes his debut with them. And then now it's rolled over to Huberdeau's agent is calling out Sutter in the on Twitter, I guess, more than anything. He's calling him out on Twitter. CC at Calgary Flames, letting him know that it's boring, not fun hockey, and he's going insane doing the same things over and over again. But this Calgary team really hasn't been able to get anything on the rails this year. A lot of that would be due to the fact that they haven't really got the goaltending, struggled to gel early. Going on the road here tonight against Arizona, who has been about a 500 team at home in that Mullet Arena. Andy, what do you look for in a game like tonight?
Yotes or nothing. I mean, like, throw out the model, everything. This Calgary Flames team is just they're a flawed team. There's no way that you can justify laying big prices on this team. They've underperformed greatly this season, and especially in these situations. They're 11-13 when their money line odds are at least minus 190 or higher. And most of those games in that sample size, their money line odds are a lot higher than that, upwards of minus 250 and higher. So, this team just, they can't get it done. And I don't think that the Coyotes are necessarily a value bet in terms of my model, but like I said, that model is projecting the Flames to win about as often as the betting market is, and the betting market's been really wrong. So I guess my model is trash too when it comes to the Calgary Flames, right? And I mean, they're just the biggest disappointment in the NHL right now. They're the least profitable team. They're everything about this team is kind of unbettable right now.
Yeah, and Vejmelka, Insight saying Vejmelka confirmed tonight. So there you go on that. But Andy, I was curious, like you're looking at this game, we're kind of saying like, all right, Coyotes or nothing. What would the numbers have to get to for you to play it, or would you play it at plus 189?
I mean, no, I like my model spits out, I think minus 206 or something like that for Calgary, so pretty close to the market there. Obviously, in order to justify a bet on the Coyotes, I'd want, upwards of plus 210 or something like that to even start to think about it, but or plus 215, sorry, something like that to even start to think about it. But I mean, just intuitively, it's Yotes or nothing, right? I can't make a case for why you would bet on the Calgary Flames at anywhere close to those odds against anybody in the league at this point.
Yeah, and you see here Aaron Lappin saying fade the Flames. They are terrible. And then Insight bringing up this Calgary Flames of the Minnesota Vikings.
Calgary plays well, but they don't get results. Okay, so but Calgary has, like, over their last 7 games since returning from the All-Star break, they've got like a 62.5% shot attempt percentage. And their expected goals percentage is like 53. If you look at other teams that have a 60-plus shot attempt percentage, their expected goals are closer to matching that, right? The Flames just aren't an efficient team. They give up too much and they don't generate enough. They're barely able to, overperform expected goals on offense, and they're still losing games, right? So I don't necessarily like. I mean, yeah, they dominate possession, but what do you do with it, right? And if you're the Calgary Flames, you're really not doing enough. So they just don't. I mean, you could look at their possession numbers; they look similar to teams like Carolina and better than teams like LA. But when you break it down in terms of scoring chances and things like that, the Flames just don't match up with those elite teams in that regard.
Yeah. And the big thing too with this Flames team is, they still continue to have their kind of up and downs in the first period. When they're losing games, it's because Markstrom's giving up the first few shots of the game behind him. They're, getting down 1-0, 2-0 early in the first and having to dig themselves out of a hole. That's tough for any team. I don't care how talented you are to do on a nightly basis. And you look at their track record right now. They've actually gone 7-2 the last 9 in the first period over. Should have easily gone over against the Flyers. That game should have been tied at 2 after 20 minutes. So
did you see the Coleman breakaway? Did you see that?
Yeah. So it was tough because I had a larger than usual bet on that first period over and did not cash it. Only got 1 goal there. So I'm hoping to cash it tonight. I'm seeing $1.35 with that over 1.5 in the first period. And we've seen in the last 6 meetings between these two teams, the over in the first period is cashed 4 of those 6 games. Like I said, 7-2 the last 9 with Calgary. In Arizona, I think we're going to start seeing them kind of slide down. Of course, as they're going to get into their full tank mode, we've already seen them go back-to-back with overs in the first period. So I think that's a worthy look there. I got, like I said, $1.35. I see $1.36 at FanDuel. So you have to kind of shop around and look for those lower prices.
Andy, I have a question for you and Alex as well, and I think people would be interested in this as we kind of wrap this up, but you touched on there the fact that your model kind of puts out similar numbers from the market for Calgary, and I know you were joking about your model not being good or whatever, but for them, but as the season goes on, maybe you look and find that it's just not putting out something for a team that's kind of accurately reflecting what's going on there. Throughout the course of a season, how do you accommodate for that, and how do you kind of make adjustments, or do you make adjustments during a season on maybe a specific team whose output isn't really matching what the numbers are giving you?
Yeah, I mean, I find it pretty tough to make those type of adjustments because they're a lot of the time going to be kind of totally arbitrary, right? And I mean, it's mostly a sample size thing, and at that point when the sample is big enough, it's almost It's not so much making adjustments as it is admitting defeat. That my process is not good at capturing this particular team, and I kind of just tend to avoid those teams when that happens. If it's such a problem where I feel like in order to get with the way things are actually working out in reality in terms of wins and losses for a specific team and match up a little bit more with their actual results, if it goes so much against my logic and the way that I've developed my process and the way that I go about things normally, it kind of seems like a little bit out there for me. So I just tend to, I'll just get this list will just grow as the season goes on, and by the end of the season I'll have 7 or 8 teams that I want nothing to do with, and I just handicap the other 80% of the league.
Yeah. It's just interesting because I know I've heard people talk about before, like, hey, my model on this team doesn't seem to be matching up, and I was just wondering, like, how that happens or over the course of a season, how you deal with it. But
well, and for me, I tend to have like 2 different sets of charts for everything. I kind of have I've heard this term used before. I kind of borrowed it, but the fast and slow chart. So you have your slow chart, which is your steady power rankings of how good is this team top to bottom, how good is their depth, how good is their coaching, how good is their home ice advantage is ranked into that. But then you have a fast chart of how they played in the last 5 or 6 games, and what kind of things are they doing from there. And you go between those two, and I think that's where you can kind of find the middle ground for those. It may be seem like a little bit more work early in the year, but later on it kind of evens out and gives you a good balance and make sure you don't overcorrect or undercorrect with teams.
Who's getting alerts there?
That's me. That phone's going nuts. So.
We got breaking news here on the show, man.
No, nothing super breaking yet. If it is, I'll let you guys know though for sure.
All right. Well, I think that'll about do it for today's show. We did lock in the regulation time for the draw in the Chicago-Dallas game, plus 472, as well as the over 1.5 first period in the Calgary-Arizona game at minus 136. So if you want to see those picks in real time, you want to see them as they grade and as we go into the game, make sure to check out BetStamp app. Download the BetStamp app on iOS and Android. You can find us in the Find Better section as Edgework HQ. Track all the progress from this season in there. So give that a look, as well as making sure to hit subscribe here on the Edgework YouTube channel, where we are live Monday through Friday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, as well as you can find us on all podcasting platforms after the show if you want to listen to it back. And you can find our new podcast with David Pagnotta, Dennis Bernstein, and Zach Bodenstein every Wednesday here on the Edgework HQ YouTube channel. So new episode coming a little bit later today. You're not going to want to miss that, especially as trade deadline approaches. They'll be looking at possible trades, some rumors, some things going on around the league, looking at futures markets and how things may be impacted by those potential moves. So make sure to hit subscribe, like this stream. Thank you to everyone who tuned in here today. Alex, Andy, appreciate your time. Appreciate the insight as always. And for everyone else out there, I will see you guys back here tomorrow morning at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time for another live show. See you guys then.